Welcome to the Nonprofit Report, your update on nonprofit organizations, issues, and leaders. I'm your host, Mark Oppenheim, and today I just am so delighted to have the team of TechSoup Global nowadays. And I'd like to introduce Marnie Webb, Chief Executive Officer, and Geri Doran, CEO and EVP. It's just so wonderful to have you both. And I've been following your work since the late 80s. So I've just dated myself. Thank you, Marnie, for being here. Geri, thank you.
We're very happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us.
So, CompuMentor.
Yeah.
CompuMentor. It started as CompuMentor. Marnie,
that's right.
Can you take us through that incredible arc of TechSoup?
I can, though I wasn't here for that whole arc. So TechSoup is a 40-year-old organization. It started as CompuMentor whenever our founder, Daniel Ben-Horan, who was a journalist, started figuring out that people that knew about technology were really, really willing to help nonprofits with their tech. And so he was setting up mentors to support nonprofit organizations in their use of their technology. And then he also noticed that his journalism buddies were getting review copies of software, and then they'd chuck that review copy, and he was like, hey, maybe we can repurpose that and we can give that to nonprofit organizations. Fast forward 40 years, because that's how long we've been around now, almost, right? Fast forward 40 years. And we have helped millions of organizations access donated and discounted software so that they can run the systems that they need to run worldwide. We are also a nonprofit organization. We're a grant-seeking organization. So we do deeper work with many of those nonprofits, helping them actually be more resilient in the face of all the changes that are coming at them. And we found some of the capabilities that we have, we were able to turn into other services. So we also run a service called NGO Source that supports United States grant makers with the diligence that's necessary for them to be able to give outside of the United States. So, that little project that started by saying, hey, there's a need and there are people willing to help, expanded into, the identification of even more needs and even more people that were willing to help. And that's what we've built the organization on.
When you're taking these ideas and you're converting them into operational reality, you have to be very, very picky about what you do, because this kind of an organization can fall over in about a second, right? So you have all these great ideas, and let's just take this sort of grant making idea and how you help nonprofits in that respect. Geri, when you look at ideation and then you're trying to think about operationalizing it, how do you think about creating an operationally self-sustaining organization, a financially self-sustaining organization that doesn't go in multiple directions and end up with no resources or insufficient resources to achieve your objectives?
Thank you, Mark. You are really speaking my language here. TechSoup has a big heart, and we want to be able to serve. And really, we're serving a sector and the organizations that normally don't have the resource to adapt to or to adopt those technology products. And we have been this intermediary to provide that product and services to them. So our operational decisions and the design and execution of our operating models are guided by our mission, social impact, and TechSoup's own financial viability and sustainability. It has been a very, very tricky balance. Like you said, we're a nonprofit. We have to make sure that we're around. We can support our own operations, use grant, and also our self-generating revenues. And to balance all these aspects of the criteria, it hasn't been easy. We serve nonprofits under 1 million. 85% of our population nonprofits we serve are very, very small. And we have been lucky enough to have a couple of pretty successful programs that we have been able to generate that cash. NGO Source program, our marketplace programs that, being able to support our financial operation, our operations. We still continue to get these supports from our grant makers and the foundations, but we have to also reinvent ourselves as everything around us is changing, the tech adoption, the tech products, and advancement of AI and all that. So how we stay relevant, how we stay viable, bring impact is we try to adapt, we innovate, we learn, and we improve in all aspects of areas. And I can really go
part of this is that when there is an interesting idea, you're looking at triangulating between the idea and the resources required to realize the idea, right? And then you also have to figure out, since you're dealing with a lot of people who cannot themselves fund, what the sources of cash are. So, Marnie, when you take a look at taking your services out into the broader market and serving your constituencies, how do you shape a team that is able to triangulate the technical side, right? You're a technical organization, right? So the technical side with the resources side, do you create a portfolio of activity that is solid and is easy to fund, and then a portfolio of activities that might be a little bit more experimental and a little bit more risky? How do you balance that risk as the chief executive officer?
It's a great question for this moment, actually, because traditionally the way that we did it is we had, as Geri was talking about, these very stable programs. So we were adding things to them: the marketplace, the donation and discount, very clear value. You're paying 4% of retail. Exactly. Very clear value. Had a sufficient margin for us to be able to do a lot of good for organizations inside of that margin. Right. And then what happened is that started slowly eroding because of software as a service, because, things that couldn't be a donation all the way. And so they had to turn to discounts because they had a cost of goods for our corporate partners, And then, the explosion of tools that were available to organizations so that they had more and more to choose from. And that became harder and harder. And, we strive as much as possible not to pass the cost on to the organization, because our goal is to lower it. So we saw our operating revenue shrinking, the space in there, the margin for us to do the other good things. And so we really had to take a hard look at ourselves and say, what is the delivery discipline that's required for us to be operating inside a sustainability index that allows us to support small organizations as they access, adopt, and optimize technology in a way they can afford and we can sustain, right? Like, that's at the heart of what Geri was just getting at. If we can't sustain it, then their ally, goes away in that. Right now, and some of that structural changes, some of it's how we set up our own delivery teams internally, constantly looking for opportunities to lower our overhead costs. Sometimes, in the last 4 years, it's been about having to make hard decisions about our organization and what we have to stop doing, which can have impacts on all of us, of course. But right now, we're asking that exact question about AI. We knew what it was like to organize to organize around a marketplace. We knew the kind of staff we needed, but as intermediaries are moving to the world of AI, and our competition isn't another company or another tool, our competition is ChatGPT. Our competition is the Google overview when a nonprofit types a question into Google search, right? Our competition is Anthropic. It's not those companies directly, it's that people are turning to them for answers. That's where they're looking for things. And so now we have to say, well, we have this terrific corpus of knowledge. How do we organize around that corpus of knowledge? It's a tremendous opportunity, because it's an opportunity to bring to the front and center everything we've learned by working directly with organization and grant-funded projects. But it's one where the technology is moving fast, and we have to make those changes. And so, I did informational interviews with a lot of CEOs of for-profit and nonprofit. And what came out of it is, continue to work with teams on these valuable core programs that still exist and use opportunities to drive down the cost. Continue to do that and increase your delivery discipline. Everything you can do to like increase your operational discipline is great. And then put together a team of people that use anarchy as its primary operating model, so that they're just saying, how fast can we get valuable things out there? What does it look like to test things? Not to keep up with the market in terms of adopting every piece of technology into our infrastructure. That's not what our goal is, but so that we're saying, let's find as fast as we can those opportunities where we can bring real value to the organizations we serve, our corporate partners, our foundation partners, and then put that into our regular operations, but release that team from having to use our embedded infrastructure, to do that.
It's almost like Scrum design or Agile design.
Kind of, but like what I heard back from colleagues in the field, our board members and others, is that even Scrum is too slow.
Yeah, well, so this idea of I love that what you said. Using anarchy as a tool, because what you can do, and Scrum was an earlier version of this, where you basically communicate constantly. You're constantly triaging. You're going toward what works. But to me, there seems to be another aspect here, in that there is an addictive quality that eliminates skill sets that are important for sustainability to some of these technologies. So organizations need to be self-reliant and financially sustainable if they lose the habit of thinking for themselves and controlling their costs, because they are we create addiction to tokenized transactions. In other words, you're given chips and you start gambling and you forget to actually represent real money, right? And then eventually, when those chips become more expensive, you can't afford them anymore. What do you do if you're a small nonprofit? You've suddenly become addicted to these tools that then become are increasingly expensive. And that's the model. You can almost foresee it. How are you thinking about your responsibility to help people remain perhaps a little bit leaner on their technical competencies and their use of technology in order to assure self-reliance, as opposed to being captured by this ecosystem that is always more, bigger, it'll cost too much?
Yeah, there are three things we're thinking about very specifically there. One is to use the principles of frugal AI. How are you thinking? So, frugal on the wallet, frugal on the environment. If I'm using less tokens, it helps with both things. Can I transfer my token usage from the cloud, in whatever format, to my, laptop by using a local model? There's a lot of things that I don't need the latest frontier model. The distance between frontier and open weight models is collapsing. There's a lot of things I don't need a frontier. I don't need a frontier model to help me with an Excel macro. Right. That's well documented. It hasn't changed, that's great. So how do I separate those things out? So really taking advantage of that. Two, how do we, because we serve so many organizations, how do we surface needs across organizations? And I'm going to use these terms a little bit loosely, so that we can spread the CapEx across many groups. A lot of times you're just using AI to make a thing, but AI isn't used to run that thing. So how do I use, if I discover food security organizations really need to be able to transform their data from this format to that format, can we make a Python script once that helps them do that, and then use the same power that helped us get donations and discounts to millions of organizations worldwide to get that script to all of those organizations, so they're not inventing it over and over and over and over again. So we've spread the CapEx of making that across all those organizations rather than forcing them.
So you're basically leveraging one investment in multiple ways.
Exactly.
So that ties to Geri's world, right, Geri?
Absolutely. Marnie talks about, how we build out the process, build out the asset that we can be leveraged in multiple programmatic areas and shortcut some of the expenses. Where I'm coming from, I want to talk about a little bit about our people. Mark, you were alluding on, these changes and transformation that we're going through. It's a constant effort and very deliberate approach that we bring our folks along. We have a lot of staff who have been around with TechSoup for a long time. And, you're talking about 25, 27 years of tenure. And then we also have a lot of new injection of talents and talents on the move. And we bring those folks along. So I think what comes down to is about communication, all the way from the CEO down to our executive team, management team, and the staff level, and ensure that we're always aligned and connected on our strategy, on our mission, have the big North Star ahead of us. But operationally, it's hard. Every day, it's a struggle. Our staff works really hard, and they take things so they're so committed to their work. And sometimes, you hear about nonprofit staff being very burnout. And I see that a lot in our team, staff members and managers. So setting the big vision, not ahead, and to see the big picture is important. We are also a very distributed and a remote team. And if I talk about our structure, we have 8 entities across the globe, 8 entities. And I can't really give you a real number. I'm going to try to get that number, like how many countries we represent in our very small 250 people organization.
Yeah, I stopped counting it, I think 100, and they're a lot. They're a lot. I was kind of surprised about how broad your reach is and how you do that with limited resources. But the thing that really stands out to me is that you both seem to be incredibly old-fashioned in that you care about people. Thank God, right? I mean, that is at the heart, right? So talk a little bit about how a tech organization, because now it's become very fashionable as a tech organization to look at people as discardable. You clearly do not look at people as discardable. What is the business case for bringing people along and relying on them and letting them think and giving them independence and empowering them? What is the business case in your environment? Geri, why don't you start off and Marnie jump in, please?
I talked a little bit about communication and presenting the big picture. Since COVID, when we had to go remote at that point, we implemented twice a month all staff meeting. Like today, this morning, we just had an all staff meeting with about 200 staff joining in from all across the globe, including staff from APAC, which is very late for them. So in those meetings, we bond, we see each other, we greet each other, we celebrate each other's success, we introduce new hires, celebrate anniversaries, and also do a lot of like org level communications about program, about how we're doing financially. So we're very, very transparent in bringing these real-time org updates, programmatic updates to our staff so that they feel connected to the work they're doing. It's not just about answering an email or answering a chat for our customer support staff. So they're connected with the bigger picture. Cultural and the value is very important for the organizations. We have EIDC program, which is our equity and inclusion program. We have a director who leads that. She's focusing on how to build out, various connection points in addition to our team meetings and task related, project related work. So we have this EIDC program. We created various employee-led groups. So, for example, we have junior professional group, racial justice group, and book clubs. We try to celebrate all the culture and all the festivals across.
And it allows people to row together, right, Marnie?
Absolutely.
If you're going to have a team and the team knows each other and they're loyal to each other and they are incentivized to reinvent constantly and to drive into a corner and listen and try to adopt your values, you've got a much more high functioning organization.
I believe that's true. I'm a big fan of both Andy Grove and Brene Brown, which may be an odd pairing. And that they both identify the CEO as the trainer in chief, actually, and that you're both modeling the behaviors you want an organization to have. And you're passing them on through the way you work with it. We're not going to be able to work with the small organizations we serve who care about the people in their communities. That's why those organizations exist. Those organizations don't exist because they think there's a financial opportunity for them, and they're not thinking about building generational wealth or thinking about those things. They saw a gap in their community that wasn't being filled by the systems that exist around them. And they stepped into it and identified that was why they were forming. That's why they made an organization, not for profit. It's in the name of the organization. It's embedded in the organization type. And so I think we have, if we expect ourselves to be curious about why these organizations have decided to help people, and if we're saying there's so much pressure on you, let us worry about the technology. Let us be your ally and worry about that piece. Then we've got to do that with our staff too. We can't just say, we're sorry, you don't know, you have to go. We've got to be curious about our staff. We have to work with our staff. We have to make sure that we're learning from our staff, and all the systems that Geri was just talking about us help make sure that we change with our staff and we can be influenced as well. Like, that has to go both ways, but you can't have your outside voice say it matters that you're proximate to the problem and you've made the choice, and your inside voice be, hey, you don't know the latest and greatest. See you later, my friend. We're going to get the new person.
You're being the change you want to be in the world, right? And you're learning from your
and the
clients.
world we want to be. Yep.
And the results are just amazing. So you've got a budget of between $35 and $40 million annually. You've helped 1.6 million organizations, not people. These are organizations. 1.6 million organizations gain $27 billion in technology and funding. You served 305,000 organizations last year. Can that be right?
Yep.
Oh my God. I mean, that's fabulous. 91% of the organizations have budgets of under $2 million. And you're working in, it's more than 234 countries and territories. It's just astounding. And that's on the back of people who know technology, care about technology, but are not captured by these cultural attributes that seem to be infecting our technology ecosystem that we need to really push back on. I think that we need to have this balance of understanding business workflows and the objectives and the numbers and so on and so forth, and fealty toward the people who are being served. And you seem to have embedded that within your culture.
We hope so. We don't always get it right, but hopefully we have enough communications inside our teams to improve, right? Like, that's the goal. Mastery is about a curve of improvement. It's not about perfection. And the environment has to change without us. And as an organization, we have to take our craft seriously and strive for continual mastery, a continual improvement process. We've been doing these events. We have one coming up next week, actually, with our executives that we're calling AI Weeks, where everybody walks in with an individual project. And the only help you get is that other people are in the room working on it, on their individual project too. So you have sounding boards and you can move things forward, because we think that being in community with one another when you work on projects that you care about is actually the real key to lowering the operating costs for our delivery to the organizations that we serve.
That's just fabulous. It's just fabulous. What should we be aware of that you're doing that might affect you over the next 2 or 3 years? How would you like? What thinking or projects would you like to share since we're coming to the end of our time? Geri, why don't you start off, and Marnie, why don't you take us out and give us a topper?
I would just generally say, as someone who's been managing the global operations, I want to be able to say yes to all our initiatives. So that's my job. And I want us to be ready from a process standpoint, from a tool perspective, from a workforce perspective, be ready to support the next vision. And we are innovating different models. And I would just give one quick example before I gave it to Marnie. Most recently, we actually hired a training class in the Philippines. We already had presence in the Philippines, but in a smaller sense, 4 or 5 people, but we doubled the size most recently. And we think they're, everywhere around the world if you choose. And of course, we have to choose strategically. There's a lot of talent there who can help support global customer operations. There's senior talent, there's, call center staff, and of course, very few organizations or company are doing the telephone support, but the chat support and all that. So we wanted to make an investment and a strategic decision to expand the operations there. The very first thing our customer support group, customer operations group managers, they were saying, oh, we need to train our managers so that they're culturally aware of how to bring on a class that is young, that are hungry, that is very willing to learn, but also operates very differently from, staff from US. So anyway, my goal is to be able to say yes when we are ready for the next big project. And Marnie is going to share with you our big project.
Well, I love that. Just before you, I just want to say how much I admire a culture that is always trying to say yes, even when at certain times you can't say yes. That psychological impact of having a counterpart who is trying to say yes is so important. That's the thing that creates confidence and loyalty. So I just wanted to say thank you very much, Geri, for that response. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think, when we think about how that translates to the outside, what we're thinking about a lot right now and working on over the next 2 to 3 years, when we think of that horizon, it's very much, what does the internet look like when it's different from what it's like today? What does it look like when I'm engaging with the internet, in my ears and with my voice, more than I'm engaging with it in other ways? What does it look like when the internet's showing up on a bunch of different tools that I'm working with in ways that I more explicitly interact with? And what does that mean to the organizations that we serve? How do we help them? I was talking to our senior leadership team yesterday, actually, about, I've been at TechSoup for 26 years. And when I started, we were having a lot of conversations about, but do organizations really need a website? What's really going to happen on the internet? Do they really have to do that? And we're having those same conversations again about AI. And just like those early website conversations, the conversations now have to be, how do you organize this information in a way that leaves the organizations with control and agency over their data? And so the projects we are working on are very much about that. How do we make them how do we, even if it changes our role, but it has to change our role, how do we make it not be a class of data brokers that transfer to the AI world and control the data and the connections and everybody has? And what can we do to empower and set up the tooling that supports organizations in owning their own data, making their own connections, and being visible in the ways that are meaningful to them, and being not visible in ways that may matter to them? We work all over the world. Visibility for organizations is not always a good thing. And so, how are we providing that kind of support in an ongoing way? And a lot of the projects that we're looking on and will be launching even as soon as next week, actually, are focused on us learning how to do that in partnership with the organizations we serve.
I love that. I love the idea of helping people to find their own way and the right balance, and reminding ourselves and others that we can't be captured by the enthusiasm to invest 100% in one type of direction, either in a particular technology or a particular approach. Part of the way that our human species has survived over, the millions of years that we've been around is just that we are adaptable. and that we don't corner ourselves into just one thing. And that's sort of what you're saying is find a balance, learn the tools, be realistic, be a little skeptical. Maybe you don't become an early adopter on everything. And you're talking about, looking into the future, but not being captured by some marketing image of what the future is.
That's right. Most of the organizations we serve have a vision of the future that's different, right? Like, again, that's why they came together. They saw something missing. How do we help them build that future?
Fabulous, fabulous. Marnie Webb, Chief Executive Officer, and Geri Doran, CEO and EVP. Please thank everybody who is involved in your organization, from the staffs that you have, the board members that you have, your donors, all of the tech companies that contribute to your work. And really, I just so admire what you've done and also the values that you've displayed today. We're so appreciative of your insights. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.